What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and I hope everyone is doing well on this Saturday as we come at you with a little bit of a matinee. Today, we will be going over my Elijah Higgins prospect profile. That'll include about 7 minutes of all 22. I'll go deep dive into him, tell y'all what I like about him, tell you what I don't like about him, and a surprise takeaway I have regarding him after watching, deep diving into his film and just making the Frank Smith connection. So we'll talk about all that. On top of that, really good article came out, and I don't say this much, from Alan Papar about what impact Fangio can make in 2023. And it actually kind of goes back on the history of Fangio's impact in year one with his team. So we'll go over that. Also, my 10 biggest questions for the Miami Dolphins heading into OTAs. There are certain questions that we're not going to find the answers to everything, but there are questions we can start to find the answers to just by observing an OTA. So it'll be interesting. The Heat are on a roll right now. They'll play tomorrow. They're up 2-0 on Boston. Joe Shad came out with a fun little article. Which Dolphins have that Jimmy Butler dog in them? Another article will go over some 3 bold predictions for Tua Tagovailoa in 2023. And also, it looks like the Super Bowl has a chance to be hosted in 2027 by Hard Rock Stadium. So we got quite a bit to talk about today. And OTAs are about to start this upcoming week, hence why we'll be looking at 10 questions heading into OTAs. So there will be some news coming out this week for sure. Shout out to all of you already showing up in the chat. There is over 100 of you guys here. Shout out to all of y'all. All right, let's give you guys that Saturday shout out, man. So, shout out to Gerald Rodriguez, PL, Andrew Harris, Chris Gifford, Robert Thomason, Jeffrey Ward, Robert King, DF Knight, JJH, Marino's Goat, JC Kang, NJ, Reborn, Chico Live, Aladino, Storm, Warrior, JB, Denisha, Garn79, Randy Constance, Dean Antonelli, Jason Keck, Ted S, Corey Moore, Aaron Berg, Sean Davis. Hey, Aaron. He says, greetings from Baltimore. Man, y'all gave my Blue Jays the work yesterday, huh? D-Hugga all day. What's going on? How you doing? So, it's nice when there's only, a little over 100 in here when we start sometimes, because then I don't got to stay here for 5 minutes and shout out everyone when there's like 400 people in the chat. What up, Joshua? How are you doing on this fine? So there is over 110 of you. Robert King, how are you doing? So, listen. I'm sitting here. I'm enjoying my weekend. And I'm thinking to myself, a lot about OTAs because, we're going to get into one of these questions here, later on. But, I'm really interested to see what UDFAs are going to, really start, to stand out. And the reason why is because, you go back, what kind of triggered all this thought for me was, you see what, I don't know if anyone's seen what happened with Preston Williams, but Preston Williams was officially cut by the Carolina Panthers. And we go back to 2020 and we remember the hope we had for Preston Williams developing into that wide receiver 2. And, it's just crazy the kind of hope even UDFAs can create for you when you see flashes of brilliance from them. And have the mighty have fallen. I'm sitting there watching Preston Williams and just, man, I just remember how good that kid was. Think about it. Before the injuries started piling up, the only thing we'd really complain about is, stop jumping before you catch the football. Right? Josh Hart says it, right? Glitch. Everyone called him Glitch. Well, now he's glitching out. And it looks like he's glitching out of the NFL and maybe towards the XFL. And I'm not even trying to be a smartass with that. It's sad, man, because there's a lot of meat left on that bone, and that kid is a super, super talented person. EJ also mentioned something in the chat that I wanted to discuss. You know, when we get into the Elijah Higgins prospect profile, yes, I mentioned Tanner Connor. And after I saw the picture that you're referring to, EJ, I know you're referring to that picture that David Ferona's put out of Tanner Connor, who looks absolutely jacked up. You know, I did have a little blurb that has since been removed out of the prospect profile of Elijah Higgins, where I was basically talking about how, you know, well, if you look at year one, Elijah Higgins has a more NFL ready body in year one than Tanner Connor did. But the way I worded it was, you know, he has a more NFL ready body up until this point. Then literally, I finished that evaluation. I finished writing it Thursday night. Friday, literally out came that picture of Tanner Connor on Friday. And I was like, well, got to go back and delete that, huh? Shout out King Z305. Shout out Scotty. You know, see, this is where I agree with you, Scotty, with the UDFAs. You know, I think Turk has a chance to displace Bailey. Pilley has an easy route. And Miller, because of what he can offer you on special teams as well. You know, listen, but there are, like, I keep talking about this guy. I know I keep bringing him up. Guys, you need to go check out Anthony Montavo's, you know, athletic profile. That thing is crazy. You know, I hope he makes, like, there's guys I hope we can get on the practice squad and develop here. You know what I mean? I like, you know, I was really high on Zeke Vandenberg coming in. Now that they're working him on inside linebacker, man, if he can't make the 53, hopefully that's a guy we can sneak on to the practice squad and continue developing, because there will be holes next year at inside linebacker. You know, there's some guys here. I'm not just sitting here saying, well, I hope they make the team. There's guys here I'm saying I hope we can sneak them into the 53 and develop them, and we can see where they're at in year two. Right? I like, you know, this isn't the same as it was with, you know, that, if everyone remembers, that Queres Nato kid, the guy who started off as, what was his name, Robert Queres Nato or something? The Brazilian kid who started off, he was a defensive tackle, then he was moved to offensive tackle, then he was moved to the interior. You know, I'm looking at this UDFA class, and I see guys here where if you can develop them for a year or two, you got guys that could develop into quality depth pieces. Because really, when you look across the board, the certain areas, you know, there's certain gaps like left guard and right tackle. Yeah, we need to figure out. But after we figure those out, it's mainly about filling out with quality depth pieces. And if you can get guys in here and develop them for a year on the practice squad, and then they can have legitimate camp battles in year two, it's very intriguing to me, you know? Garrett Nelson's another guy like that. Like, I would like to see, you know? Look at this. We'll talk about this too. Who the hell's our backup center beyond this year? Dan Feeney, is this the only lock here? You know what I mean? Is Alama Ulave going to give, you know, I hope he can at least get onto the practice squad and we can develop him, because he looks like he's set to be a better depth piece at center for us short term than what Dieter was. So there are guys I hope that they perform well enough that we say, okay, let's get them into the practice squad, you know, and we can continue to develop them. Now, sure, I know the guys will get snatched. And look at what William Samper says. 7 O-linemen on one-year contracts right now. You know what I mean? So it's gonna be very interesting to see. And, like, you know, Robert Hayes. I'm probably not gonna do a prospect profile on Robert Hayes, just because the Cedric Ogbuehi and the Isaiah Wynn signings have kind of, you know, pushed him potentially down the, you know, and so I might do some UDFA or 2 UDFA prospect profiles. I'm gonna figure out who I'm gonna do next, so I'll let y'all know. But, you know, like Robert Hayes, you know, now he's kind of, is he gonna be any more than a practice squad? You know, there was no one really ahead of him other than Robert Jones and Lester Cotton to really start battling Eichenberg for. But now you've added legitimate competition. Is he even gonna get there? So, you know, we'll see. we will see how it all works out. But man, OTA starting this week. There's a lot to keep your eye on. There's going to be a lot to be interested in, really, right? And so we're going to go over that. And Robert King Jr. says it. Development is important, especially in-house when you're developing them and fine-tuning them and tailoring them specifically to your scheme. It's very, very, very imperative. When you can get good depth guys coming off the practice squad, that's when you can really start bragging to the people in football circles about your coaching staff, right? So, we've had good luck with UDFAs over the past couple of years, and I honestly think this is one of the more intriguing UDFA classes I've seen in recent memory for the Miami Dolphins. So it's going to be interesting to see how it all shakes out, What's going on, Q? How you doing? What's the percentage of a chance we still sign a Cam Fleming? Listen, June 1st, we are not far off, ladies and gentlemen. We are not far off, all right? We are about 12 days away from that money freeing up. And to me, this team ain't done. I still think this team will have some additions made to it before we even enter training camp in late July. Sorry, in July, I apologize. So I'm not ruling out anyone, but I will say, Cam Fleming and Brandon Shell, their chances, they took a little bit of a hit when we brought in Cedric Ogbuehi and Isaiah Wynn. So, barring injury or something like that, I don't know. But again, we're going to have a lot of answers start to unfold in the next 2 weeks, really at the latter end of those 2 weeks, right? At the tail end of those. So, we'll see. We will see. It's just like everyone's going to get their Dalvin Cook answer in the beginning of July too, not only from the Dolphins, but from the Vikings as well. Because I don't see the Vikings dragging that out into July. So, answers are going to start coming our way. Again, all we got to do is be patient, practice patience, and let's see it unfold. We got a lot of money clearing up. Now, could they roll over some of that? Sure. But do I think they're going to roll over $13 million in the next year? No. And then if you do extend Wilkins, guess what? All of a sudden, you extend Wilkins, you clear up even more money. And for all my Patreons and channel members, they got the update earlier this week, and now I'll give it to you guys. From my understanding, there have been no contract extension talks thus far between Connor Williams' camp and the Miami Dolphins. So again, I go back to my Alama Ulave comment earlier. What are we doing back there? What's the depth situation at center right now? Dan Feeney's only on a year, and Connor Williams only has a year until he's a free agent. And the issue with that is you got to get Connor Williams done this year. Because I'm going to tell you this. If he goes out there and keeps playing well next year, him and his agent are just going to say, well, yeah, okay. If we don't hear a number we like, yeah, we're just going to wait till free agency because my guy has proven he can be a top 10 center and a top 10 guard. That's rare to find. He's going to reset the market. If you do not handle this right now and get ahead of this, he will reset the market and he will price himself out of Miami next season. And everyone knows I'm a big supporter of Chris Grier. There's no doubt about that. But one thing I've always knocked Chris Grier for, and I will continue, is he never gets out ahead of stuff like this. Christian Wilkins, he could have got ahead out of this last offseason, and it was a $14 to $15 to $16 million a year market, probably somewhere in the $14 to $15 million. Now we're flirting with $20+ million a year on this market, just because he didn't get out ahead of it. Now, I get having all the faith in the world in him and Brandon Shore and the contracts they work because they've been masterful to this point. But at some point, not getting out ahead of it is going to bite you in the ass. And it's going to either cost you more money or cost you a talent that walks. And what I fear is that Connor might be that talent that walks and says, yeah, I'm going to reset the market. I'm out. Peace. Thanks very much. Sayonara. That's what I'm worried about. Knight says, shout out to you, OG. In the last year alone, my talent values have got so much better because of your shows. Can't wait for A-Chain to ball out. Either can I, man. I don't know if you guys saw, but the team, all 32 teams sent representatives to like some rookie photo shoot, and we sent Devin A-Chain, the speedster. You know, at the end of the day, do I want Dalvin Cook? Do I believe this team is in win now and will throw everything in the kitchen sink at it to try and get a Super Bowl? Yes. But if we don't get Dalvin Cook, and that means more opportunities for Devin A-Chain in year one, you ain't going to hear many complaints from me or see very many tears shed down this face. Because Devin A-Chain, he got a chance to break out in year one. And I want to see what he does, man. So, you know, even if they were to acquire Dalvin Cook, I'd still thin out that herd a little bit after that. You know what I mean? So, anyways, let's get into this stuff, guys. So, on SI, they came out with an article, and we've been talking all offseason about Fangio and what he will do in year one. And it says, what impact can Fangio make in 2023? History says a big one. The Miami Dolphins defense should make a significant jump next season based on Vic Fangio's NFL career. Vic Fangio's credentials and reputation have been well established by now, some 3 months after the Miami Dolphins hired him to become their defensive coordinator. But there's one aspect of his NFL resume that deserves more scrutiny. It's not just that Fangio has had success at every stop during the career as a defensive coach, it's how quickly he's been able to make an impact. It's actually quite remarkable, staggering even. Simply put, Fangio's arrival has meant a big jump for any defense he's joined during his 8 stops in the NFL, not including his time with the Carolina Panthers and Houston Texans, who he joined in each team's first season as an NFL franchise. But at the other 6 stops, the jump after Fangio's arrival was massive. How massive? In his first year at linebackers coach for the Saints in 1986, defensive coordinator for the Colts in 1999, special assistant to the head coach, defensive assistant for the Ravens in 2006, defensive coordinator for the 49ers in 2011, defensive coordinator for the Bears in 2015, and head coach for the Broncos in 2019. Each team's defense improved its ranking by 10.5 spots in both points allowed and total yards allowed. Again, 10.5 spots. The breakdown illustrating his immediate impact on a defense. In New Orleans, the Saints went from being 22nd in points allowed and 24th in yards allowed to 7th and 14th respectively. In 99 with Indianapolis, the Colts went from 29th in both points allowed and yards allowed to 17th and 15th respectively. Baltimore, 2006, the Ravens went from being 10th in points allowed and 5th in yards allowed to 1st in both categories. In 2011, the 49ers went from being 16th in points allowed and 13th in yards allowed to 2nd and 4th, respectively. The Bears went from 31st in points allowed and 30th in yards allowed to 20th and 14th, respectively. The Broncos, they went from 13th in points allowed and 22nd in yards allowed to 10th and 12th, respectively. Rounding out the numbers, Fangio joined the teams at average rankings of 20th in points allowed and 22nd in yards allowed. And those teams went to 9th in points allowed and 12th in yards allowed. So, yeah, we could talk about the addition of Jalen Ramsey. We could talk about Bradley Chubb from the start of the season. We could talk about Emmanuel Ogba, Brandon Jones, and Nick Needham being back from injury. But this right here is big if you want to be optimistic about the Dolphins defense in 2023. The Dolphins were 24th in points allowed and 18th in yards allowed last season. So using the same average as Fangio's respective year at those previous stops, the Dolphins would move to 9th and 12th respectively. The biggest jump that's happened in Fangio's first year as a defensive or head coach came with the Colts. And that kind of jump could put the Dolphins in top 10 in both categories. Regardless of how big the jump, it's almost a guarantee that there will be a jump because, paraphrasing Bill Parcells here, Fangio's record is what it is. I mean, put that into perspective right there. You know, we talk about if this defense can be top 10 and top 5 almost ad nauseum this offseason under Fangio. And you look at all the leaps in yards and points allowed each defense has made that he's been added to, and it's significant. And, you might be able to make the argument that out of all those defenses he joined, maybe the San Francisco 49ers in 2011 was the only one nearly as talented as the one we are fielding this year. Right? You talk about that Navarro Bowman and that Patrick Willis defense, which is disgusting. But our secondary is far better than what that 2011, this is the best secondary he's arguably ever had. I could also make the argument this is the best front he's ever had and the deepest front he's ever had. His only weak spot seems to be on the second level. So, you sit back and you look at Vic Fangio and what he could really do for this team and the impact he could really have. And it's really quite astonishing in year one, because then you say to yourself, man, if we get those many leaps in year one, what the hell is this defense going to look like in year two of him under it? So, very, very interesting stuff. But now heading into OTAs, let's get into my top 10 questions heading into OTAs, because I got questions. So let's start off with number one here. Where does Isaiah Wynn get his reps? Left guard. Is Terron Armstead not going to be participating at all, so the majority of it's going to be at left tackle? Is he going to get looks at right tackle, or are they going to do what I think they should and just keep him on the natural left side? Listen, they paid this man almost $3 million a year. He clearly waited around and bided his time for the perfect opportunity, and that tells us that he believes this is the perfect opportunity. So why is it the perfect opportunity? What have they told him? Remember, he refused to comment on if they told him he'd be getting in competition for a starter role. He refused to comment. So where Isaiah Wynn gets his reps in OTAs, that's going to be very interesting to watch. And that leads into the second one. Who's going to be the competition for Jackson and Eichenberg? Right? Is it just going to be Robert Jones, Lester Cotton? Is Isaiah Wynn going to be thrown into that competition at left guard? Is Cedric Ogbuehi the competition they have in mind for Jackson, like me and Neil think it is right now? It might change after June 1st when the money frees up. But who are writers and observers going to come away from OTA saying, okay, well, that's Jackson and Eichenberg's competition heading into training camp? Or is it going to be one of those things where we're saying, man, that competition is on the roster and they got to go find it? What looks will Vic Fangio show, if any? Is it going to be purely vanilla? We've all heard the stories about him bragging to coordinators he's going to face this year about the new installs and coverages he's going to run this year. So you ask yourself this, is he going to show anything? I still think it's going to be mainly vanilla. And I think where, when they do kind of that exotic stuff, it's going to be when no one's around. I even think the looks will be somewhat limited during training camp on the days where fans are going, and on the days where fans are not permitted, you'll see more looks, especially with, I'm sure they're very aware of how much practice film got out last year. So, it's going to be very interesting if we're reading OTA observations and Fangio showing some exotic looks. So, what's he going to show in OTAs, if any? Remember, pads aren't even on. How's this secondary depth going to shake out coming out of OTAs? Are we going to, are Trill Williams and Nick Needham and Brandon Jones, are they going to be still rehabbing coming out of OTAs? Are they going to be healthy enough where we're starting to see the depth charts fill out at corner and safety? Because there are a lot of injuries and a lot of people trying to recover in that secondary from injuries they suffered last year. So how is that secondary depth going to shake out coming out of OTAs? Is Trill Williams, if he's healthy, are they going to be trying him at safety? It's going to be very interesting. Very, very interesting. So, 5, who fills the wide receiver role early on behind Hill and Waddle? We've seen Braxton Berrios putting in work with the boys and with Waddle's, footwork coach. We've seen Eric Izakama constantly outperform, constantly working out with Tua and Hill, building that chemistry. You see Robbie, Chosen Anderson. Look what he's doing out here. He's already building a rapport with Tua, and he's hungry. So who's going to take that wide receiver role early on in OTAs and take the lead heading into training camp? If you want my money, I put my money on Braxton Berrios. Because that wide receiver role mainly is a slot role too. And I've been saying for quite some time, I think Braxton Berrios is the perfect receiver for Tua Tagovailoa. Number 6, are Eric Izakama and Channing Tindall ready to contribute? Are we going to be coming away from OTAs not hearing much about these guys? I think Eric Izakama is ready to contribute. Channing Tindall, to me, is going to be the one that's very interesting to see because, remember, he said he had a real hard time grasping the playbook last year. We've now changed defenses, new scheme, new playbook, new terminology. Is he going to be continuing to struggle? It's going to be very interesting. And I'm going to talk about, and when we get to number 8 here, it'll kind of tie into that a little bit. Number 7, which newly drafted Dolphin will impress the most? Is Cam Smith going to be out there trying to lock down in one-on-ones? Is Devin A-Chain's speed just going to blow everyone out of the water? Is Elijah Higgins up the seam? Are people going to look at him the way I'm looking at him and saying, oh my God, Frank Smith might have found another Darren Waller? Which newly drafted Dolphin will impress, even though it is the Underwear Olympics? Who are we going to come away impressed with the most out of these newly drafted Dolphins? And then kind of tying into Channing Tindall, will any UDFAs make some noise? I mean, let's be honest. The playing level is, the playing field is level for a guy like Aubrey Miller to come in and unseat Channing Tindall. It really is. And are we going to come away hearing that, they're impressed with other linebackers not named Channing Tindall? Because if it's some of those UDFA names, we got to start worrying about Channing. Are Myles Gaskin's days numbered? Listen, with or without Dalvin Cook, this looks like A-Chain, Mostert, and Wilson's backfield, and Ahmed and Gaskin are just riding the coattails. And I said it. Remember, the first move McDaniel and his staff made offensively when they were hired last season was they re-signed Salvon Ahmed, a guy who was drafted by the 49ers, who Kyle Shanahan and McDaniel both liked, and we scooped him up off waivers. Myles Gaskin was not a McDaniel pick where, guess what? Salvon Ahmed was. So, I don't see them carrying 5 running backs, especially with Alec Ingold and such on the roster. So are Myles Gaskin's days numbered? You got to ask yourself that. And finally, we talked about it a little bit earlier with Alama Ulave. Is Dan Feeney a lock as the backup center? I mean, who the hell is his competition at backup center right now? Dieter's on a milk box somewhere. He's missing. It's Alama Ulave is the only seems legitimate competition for Dan Feeney at the backup center role. Should that be concerning considering Dan Feeney isn't that great and he's only on a 1-year deal? Are we expecting Alama Ulave from San Diego State to just play out of his mind in OTAs and training camp when it arrives? Because that's expecting a lot. That is expecting a lot from a UDFA. And you look at right now, man, we do not have a lot of depth at that position at all, if any. So those are the top 10 biggest questions for the Miami Dolphins heading into OTAs. I want to hear in the chat, what are your questions right now? What questions do you have going into OTAs? If you're watching this after the episode's aired, leave in the comment. I want to hear what your biggest question for the Miami Dolphins heading into OTAs are. I know someone in the chat, will Skylar make the fit? You won't know that till training camp, right? That's a when you start looking at who's going to make the 53, those are training camp questions. You know what I mean? So, yeah, I would love to hear you guys' thoughts on what you guys are questioning regarding the Miami Dolphins heading into OTAs, because we're not going to get all the answers, but we could come away with some, right? So, hey man, football is football. I'm just glad it's back. I am just glad it's back. I had to bring this one up because I know all you Heat fans are really going to love it. Joe Shad wrote an article. He said, which Dolphins have that Jimmy Butler dog in them? Esteemed NBA and NFL broadcaster Kevin Harlan compared Jimmy Butler to Xavier Howard and Jalen Ramsey for his defensive prowess on Wednesday night. Butler's fearless, relentless clutch. He is, in fact, Himmy Butler. As GQ declared in a headline during the NBA playoffs, Jimmy Butler has a whole kennel of dog in him. As outlined, Heat star Jimmy Butler snatches your soul. With Butler, it's a whole pack of hyenas, each one feasting on a different part of the opponent's carcasses, Matthew Robinson wrote, which got us thinking, who is the Dolphins' Jimmy Butler? Which Dolphins have that dog in them? Well, for sure, a certain level of competitiveness is required for any athlete to make it to the highest level of professional football, but sometimes guys just stand out, in the locker room, on the practice field, on the sideline, in interviews. As Miami's quarterback, Tagovailoa is thrust into the position of leadership, and he largely chooses to lead by example. For better or worse, he does not possess the brashness or edge of a Jimmy Butler. We should recognize the persistent effort that many of the top Dolphins deliver. There's certainly a good measure of dog in players like Jalen Phillips, Taron Armstead, Zach Seiler, Jeff Wilson, and Raheem Mostert. Miami hopes the linebacker duo of Jerome Baker and David Long and pass rushers Bradley Chubb and Emmanuel Ogbah will deliver a pack of dogs mentality to Vic Fangio's defense. We think they can, but I can declare with confidence that Miami's lead dogs are Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Howard, Jalen Waddle, Christian Wilkins, and Javon Holland. These players are not vanilla. These players are not followers. These players do not see eggshells. No, Hill, Ramsey, Howard, Waddle, Wilkins, and Holland are confident and bold and sometimes loud and always noticed. They have a fighter's DNA. Think Manny Pacquiao in his prime. Think Conor McGregor at his best. These are the guys who believe they are great and see no need to apologize for it. These are the guys who believe their speed and power and instincts and savvy put them at a distinct advantage on Sunday and sometimes Friday, apparently. Sometimes, like Butler, they can get a little chippy on the field for sure, and perhaps off it at times too. Hill, Ramsey, Howard, Waddle, Wilkins, and Holland are capable of making waves with comments, including about the opponent. But they're also all deadly serious about their jobs and about winning. To drill down on the question posed earlier, which Dolphin has the most Jimmy Butler dog in him? And they say it's Tyreek Hill. He's not only the most acclaimed, fastest, and best player on the team, but just ask him. I've always been that dude, Hill said last season. He is. The Dolphins suddenly have a locker room packed with alpha dogs or dogs, whichever you prefer. These dudes are high-octane, unflinching, and unrelenting, just like Jimmy Butler. And no one meets that description more than Tyreek Hill. Again, in the chat right now, who has the most dog in them on the Miami Dolphins roster? Because to me, it's Tyreek or Taron Armstead. Taron Armstead playing through a turf toe that he was told to shut down after week 1, and with a torn pec for the whole season, you got to have a whole lot of dog in you to play like that. But I get the Tyreek argument, because the Tyreek does seem like the most Jimmy on this roster. So I do think the Tyreek comparison's pretty good. But, man, Taron Armstead got that dog in him too. Definitely got that dog in him, playing through what he played through. Unbelievable. But, yeah, I would agree. Tyreek Hill, I see a lot of you are agreeing with it too. Yeah, Tyreek Hill, yeah, I would concede that. I would concede that. Look at the NFL Analysis Network. They came out with 3 bold predictions for Tua Tagovailoa. And shout out to Watch Mister with the $9.99 donation. He says Armstead 100% against the Browns. Myles Garrett didn't beat him once, not once. I'm telling you, Armstead's a dog, bro. Armstead's a dog. All right, so here are the 3 bold predictions by the NFL Analysis Network for Tua Tagovailoa. They think he stays healthy for the entire season. The Dolphins looked like a Super Bowl contender before their season was turned upside down, with Tagovailoa suffering multiple head injuries. They want to reach that point again. They'll have to do everything in their power to help him keep him healthy this season. Whether that means running the ball a little bit more to take pressure off him or changing the kind of passing plays that are called, head coach Mike McDaniel will do it. It will breed very positive results as well. Tagovailoa will play in all 17 regular season games, putting the Dolphins on track for another excellent season. Miami was 8-3 in games he played start to finish without an injury, going 1-5 in the other games. Another bold prediction, top 3 MVP finish for him. Well, I'll say, the boldest here so far is the 17 regular season games being played. And I don't think it's bold to say after what we saw last year that he's going to be in the MVP conversation if he stays healthy. They just said despite only playing in 13 games in 2022 and suffering injuries in 3 of them, Tagovailoa ended up finishing 9th in MVP voting. Had he stayed healthy for the entirety of the season, he would have finished much higher on the list. Building off the first early bold prediction, staying healthy for the entire season will put him back in the MVP race again this upcoming season. He will finish in the top 3, once again leading the league in multiple passing categories. Last season, Tagovailoa paced the league in touchdown percentage, yards per attempt, adjusted yards per attempt, yards gained per completion, quarterback rating, net yards gained per pass attempt, and adjusted net yards per pass attempt. He will replicate that high level of success with Hill and Waddle, once again leading the way. And I'll add to that, and if all that happens, Hill and Waddle are breaking the single-season duo receiving yard record. And their number 1 bold prediction is, with all of that, with him staying healthy, with him being in the MVP race, the Dolphins win the AFC East. The Dolphins proved last season when healthy they could hang with any team in the league. With some improvements made defensively, they are on an even better position to succeed in 2023. The AFC East has a chance to be the toughest division in the NFL this season, but it will be the one the Dolphins will navigate successfully. With Tua Tagovailoa healthy and playing at a high level, Miami is going to win their first AFC East title since 2008 when Chad Pennington was leading the offense and Tony Sparano was the head coach. The team will then reward Tagovailoa with a big contract extension, locking him in as their option at quarterback. Listen, if he stays healthy and he's in the MVP race like we all think he will be if he stays healthy, yeah, we win in the East. I've already said I think Leslie Frazier, the loss of Tremaine Edmonds, you look at what's happened in Buffalo right now, I expect Buffalo to regress this year. I don't expect Buffalo. They might have missed their window. That's how I see Buffalo. Now, we'll see what they do this year and how that defense responds, but they might have missed that window. Over 250 of you in the room, please smash that like button, subscribe if you are new. Yeah, Adrian, you should be loving South Florida sports right now. I mean, that Carolina Panthers game was crazy a few nights ago. Absolutely nuts. I remember Washington and Pittsburgh in the late 90s. We went till about 1:30 in the morning as well, too. And then Peter Nedved scored the game winner. So even as a Penguins fan, I've seen late games like that, too. But 4 overtimes was crazy. Shout out to Matthew Tkachuk for ending that, huh? All right. And then before we get into the Elijah Higgins prospect profile, we're going to get into that right here in a sec. Just an update for you guys. Guess what? The 2027 Super Bowl might be coming to Miami. Miami's optimistic it will hold off Los Angeles as host for the Super Bowl in 2027. There's optimism in Miami that despite a late challenge by Los Angeles, South Florida will land the Super Bowl in 2027, a league source told the Palm Beach Post on Friday. Rodney Barreto, longtime chairman of South Florida's Super Bowl bid committees, would not estimate the chance of Hard Rock Stadium hosting the game for the first time since 2020. We obviously want to get a game back in Miami, Barreto said. We believe we had a very successful last Super Bowl, and the world was shut down after that Super Bowl. We had it in Tampa the next year, and it just wasn't the same. With the next 2 Super Bowls spoken for, the next available game will be 2026. The 49ers Levi's Stadium is expected to be awarded that game when NFL owners meet next week in Minneapolis, according to Ben Fisher of the Sports Business Journal. It's unclear whether the 2027 site will also be chosen at that meeting or pushed back to next year. South Florida, which has hosted a record 11 Super Bowls, would be better equipped to handle the 2027 game anyway. Hard Rock Stadium's calendar is packed with annual events including Dolphin games, Formula One racing, and the Miami Open tennis tournament. But there are 2 major special events in addition on this docket: the World Cup soccer tournament that summer and college football's national championship game on January 5th, 2026. Kevin Demoff, COO of the LA Rams, said last month that SoFi Stadium wants the 2027 Super Bowl. SoFi, considered by many to be the cream of NFL venues, hosted the 2022 game, so it in effect would leapfrog Miami if it were to get the 2027 game. The February 10th, 2024 game will be in Las Vegas, followed by the February 9th, 2025 game in New Orleans. If the 49ers bid succeeds for 2026, it's not a given that Los Angeles would be disqualified for 2027 on the basis of having back-to-back games in proximity to one another. Starting in February 2019, the Super Bowl host cities were Atlanta, Miami, and Tampa. A string of the Saints, 49ers, and Rams stadiums would mean 3 consecutive NFC hosts. The NFL could consider a new challenger, Nashville, relatively soon. The Tennessee Titans plan to open a 60,000-seat stadium with a translucent roof in 2027. Titans president Burke Nihill is already targeting Super Bowls, Final Fours, and college football playoff games. The stadium will be built near the Nissan Stadium and within walking distance of Nashville's compact downtown area. It's going to be a beautiful world-class facility for Titan fans and for everyone who comes to the stadium for concert and soccer games, Nihill said. The world's biggest events, it's very reasonable to be believing they'll be coming to Nashville starting in 2027. The NFL uses Super Bowls as a reward for constructing stadiums, but often waits a year before placing the championship game there to allow the facilities to work out any bugs. So, man, that might be right outside of our window, huh? That might be right outside of our window. Would have loved to see. Imagine watching the Dolphins lift Lombardi at the Rock. How freaking beautiful would that be, huh? Tell me, how beautiful would that be? Man, that would be a beautiful, 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 beautiful sight. All right, guys, let's get into Elijah Higgins and the prospect profile of him. Please smash the like button. Subscribe if you're new. If you can donate, I appreciate it, because these type of videos where I do these all 22, XOS Digital Sports loves to demonetize them. They monetize the Devon A. Chain one, etc., etc. So if you can, smash that like button. Subscribe if you're new. If you can donate, I appreciate it. If not, just do me the favor and smash that like button. Let's get the likes up, up, up. There's over 260 of you in the room. Let's get those likes over 200, please. All right? I appreciate all of y'all. So let's get into this. One of the more intriguing picks by the Miami Dolphins of the 2023 draft, Elijah Higgins, a wide receiver transitioning to tight end, is a sleeper to quietly make a nice impact on the 2023 Miami Dolphins. After letting Mike Gesicki walk in free agency while adding Eric Sauber to the tight end room, Elijah Higgins is not only Gesicki's replacement, it seems, but may have a higher ceiling at the position in Mike McDaniel's offense, given how much more he is able to do. Sure, Higgins may not have the pedigree Gesicki did coming out of Penn State, but Higgins is just as big of a seam threat, and I'd say handles physicality better at the catch point, offers you more after the catch, and quite frankly shows a willingness, desire, and potential functional strength to blow out what Gesicki offers you in line as a blocker. Basically, he can be a big slot, but offer you much more as a true tight end too if need be. This pick makes sense like the Cam Smith and Devon A. Chain picks before it from a depth standpoint too. Durham Smythe is the only true tight end on the roster under contract beyond this year, and Saubert and Croft have only inked one-year deals, while Tanner Connor still remains a developmental project. That also tells us there's going to be some opportunities for Elijah Higgins to not only make the 53-man roster, but also make some plays this season too, given that Tanner Connor had a few chances in 2022, while I also think Higgins will make the transition to tight end much easier and smoother than Connor has so far. A 4-star recruit in 2019 who was the 85th ranked prospect nationally of the recruiting class, Elijah Higgins also comes from a bloodline of athletes, with his father being a former football player in South Florida, while his mother played junior college basketball and for the Puerto Rican national team. After spending his freshman and sophomore seasons as nothing more than merely a backup at Stanford, it didn't take long for Higgins to take over the wide receiver room when given the opportunity as a starter, as he led the team in receiving as a junior with 45 receptions for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns, averaging 11.1 yards per reception. Then as a senior, the wide receiver corps at Stanford was once again his to lead, as he finished with 59 receptions for 704 yards and 2 touchdowns, averaging about 11.9 yards per reception. 2022 was also kind of a breakout year for Higgins, as this was also the first season Stanford started utilizing him as a true weapon too, as he was given opportunities to make plays out of the backfield. On top of that, he was 9th in forced missed tackles on receptions amongst Power 5 receivers with 17, and 190 of his 704 receiving yards were after contact, which ranked him 2nd amongst Pac-12 receivers. Elijah Higgins offers you a very intriguing combination of size, speed, athleticism, and strength at the tight end position. He moves so smoothly and displays fluid footwork when running his routes. It can also can't be denied that not only can he separate from the second-level defenders with a nose for finding space, but he can also muscle them at the catch point too, if need be, making him a matchup nightmare for linebackers and defensive backs who are tasked with covering him. Though he ran a 4.54 electronic timed 40 at the combine, he has been hand-timed at 4.44 with his 40 time, which at 6'3", 239 pounds is very impressive. In fact, against UCLA in 2021, on a 56-yard touchdown reception, he was recorded hitting a top speed of 21.5 miles per hour. Higgins is versatile, as he can play the boundary, the slot, or in line, but he also displays really soft hands that are also 10.5 inches. He has really good body control, which helps him high point and win battles for the ball at the catch point, while he also shows really good ball tracking ability too. Higgins will have some things he must clean up though, as he had 10 drops over the last 3 seasons, with 4 in each of the last 2. He also had 2 fumbles in 2022, so taking care of the ball will be a priority for him. Higgins also suffered from lackluster quarterback play at time during Stanford, while I'd say he also needs to crispen out his route running. He tends to round out his routes and his breaks, and his route tree, again, wasn't overly expansive at Stanford. As one of the biggest risers from the Senior Bowl, Higgins put himself on the map with a lot of NFL teams, 28 of which suggested that he convert from receiver to tight end. Obviously, that's where he'll fit in with the Dolphins, but you have to wonder what his arrival will do to Tanner Conner. All of a sudden, you want those snaps chances to go to Higgins. Well, it seems Higgins' body is more NFL ready for the position than Tanner Conner was in year 1, but Tanner Conner's yoked up now. One thing you wanted to see on tape more was Higgins as a red zone threat, which is another area I think the Dolphins will focus on developing him at. After all, contested catches is a specialty of his, and the Dolphins are seriously lacking in that area of big-bodied red zone targets. Something interesting to watch this year will be to see how much the Dolphins operate in 12 personnel, as only 8% of their pass plays came in 12 personnel, which was tied for the 4th lowest in the NFL, while in total they only ran 113 plays in 12 personnel, which was 10% of their total plays overall during the 2022 season. The Dolphins also posted their lowest expected points added of any personnel grouping in 12 personnel at minus 0.16. Gesicki's absence leaves a void in that personnel grouping for Higgins, Croft, Conner, or Saubert to fill, though, as he was on the field for 68 of those 113 plays, while Smythe led the way, playing 111 of those snaps. To be fair, even with George Kittle in 2021 with Mike McDaniel as their offensive coordinator, the 49ers used 12 personnel for the 3rd lowest amount in the league at, wait for it, 10%. The exact same output as the Dolphins in 2022. But in 2021 under Flores, before McDaniel arrived, the Dolphins led the league in 12 personnel at 61%. Higgins is going to have to make the most of his chances, though, as with low 12 personnel usage and Smythe comfortably solidified as tight end 1, I don't foresee him getting anywhere near 100 snaps offensively unless there's an injury ahead of him on the depth chart. But I do expect Elijah Higgins to beat out Tanner Conner in training camp. Listen, the Miami Dolphins may not have drafted one of the tight ends most Dolphins were eyeing, like Darnell Washington, who slipped due to injury concerns, Tucker Kraft, who Miami was high on pre-draft, or anyone else for that fact, but this Elijah Higgins move is eerily similar to the Darren Waller selection by the Ravens, who was a 6th-round pick also. Remember, after being drafted as a wide receiver out of Georgia Tech in 2015, it wasn't until 2018 when the Raiders picked up Waller that he was converted to a tight end under Frank Smith, who was the tight ends coach and now serves as the Miami's offensive coordinator. So, what does that all mean? This could be a very high upside pick with low risk that was clearly made with Frank Smith's involvement, who has done this successfully before. So, you look at Elijah Higgins, you look at what he offers you in those seams. Man, this is a guy that one thing that did pop out at me is, he played a lot faster than that 5.4 speed I saw on field. Now, he's one of those guys who's got to accelerate and build up that speed. But you look at him, and Elijah Higgins, again, it reminds me of Darren Waller. That's what I see when I look at this. And I really think that's what, Frank Smith is seeing. That's what I see when I look at him. People forget Darren Waller was a receiver, People forget it took a few years and the proper coaching staff to transition him. And the thing is, we just might have been, this might be the case of if Darren Waller had been drafted by Frank Smith and the Raiders and he'd been converted right away. Now, I know he's a little bit taller, Darren Waller. I believe he's 6'5", 6'6", while, Higgins is 6'3". But, 240, moves the way he does, wants to put on some more weight. I think this is a better transitional move than what Tanner Conner was last period. But I'll say this. If you can turn Tanner Conner into something at that position and Higgins can develop at that position as well, man, Tanner Conner runs a 4.4 and this guy can run a 4.4 as well. You might have something. If you can develop Tanner Conner and Elijah Higgins to when, Smythe's contract ends after next year, not this year, next year, and they can step in as the 2 top primary guys, you've got a scary athletic tight end duo. So I see the vision of what they're trying to build with Tanner Conner and Elijah Higgins as a duo down the road. And it is a scary, scary vision. It's just speed it's exactly what IMAX just said. Speed everywhere. Speed everywhere, even at the tight end spot. Right? We can hit you out of the backfield. We can hit you out in line. We can hit you in the slot. We can hit you in the boundary with speed. Everywhere. The vision is crazy when you sit back and look at it. So, I liked Elijah Higgins coming away from the film. I liked that pick a lot more than I originally did coming away from the film. I really, really, really deep dived on him, and I really liked what I saw from Elijah Higgins, and I like this pick. So it's going to be very interesting to see how that works out, man. Very interesting. Shout out to Coke Master D. He says smash, 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 and he donated $10. Appreciate y'all. Man, like I said, if you can, please donate. If you can't, smash that like button. Help me out with my friend Algorithm, because there is over 270 of you in the room right now. So please do me that favor. Smash the like button. Please, please, please. OTAs this week, ladies and gentlemen. Right? We're starting to slowly but surely get there. We're inching. We're getting there. So, now, like I said earlier, I don't know who the next prospect profile I'm going to do is. I'm going to keep y'all updated and let y'all know. Probably this week I'll decide on that. I don't think I'm going to do Ryan Hayes. I might look at some of these UDFAs and select a few UDFAs if possible, right? Now, I don't know if I'll be able to do an Aubrey Miller, because Aubrey Miller, I've really had to watch. I only have one game of all 22 of him. I basically have had to watch, I've had to find broadcast footage. So with Aubrey Miller. So I don't know if I'll be doing an Aubrey Miller one because that would be my first selection right away. But the all-22 is for some reason very, very scarce when it comes to that. I only have Jackson State versus Campbell. That's the only game I have. So shout out to Topher with the $20 donation. Appreciate you, sir. Thank you for donating. Goes a long, long way. Man, sitting here with a pinch of nerve. Got a cold, all jacked up on cold medicine, chopping up film and writing evaluations because the grind don't stop because y'all deserve the best contact possible. You want a Turk prospect profile. Oh, my. I don't know how long that'll be. Never done one on a punter before. It's not... Listen, I like Matt Ariza, but I'm not out here saying I'm an expert on evaluating punters. But, hey... I'll figure it out. I'll let you know. For Patreons, I will be dropping an episode of 3 Takes either tonight or tomorrow night. So be on the lookout for that. We'll be doing another Patreon-only video, 3 Takes. If you want to become a Patreon, patreon.com/Phinside The NFL. Just like if you're a channel member here, you get access to insider info. The only difference is, as a channel member, you get all these emojis and different access. But 3 Takes is a Patreon exclusive. I am thinking during the season... I might bring 3 Takes to channel members as well, right? All year long, it'll be exclusive to Patreon, and in season, I might include channel members and upload it for channel members as well, too. So, something I'm looking at. Either way, guys, I'm going to get out of here. I am going to be back this week. I'm aiming for Monday. I hope all y'all will join me. Please smash the like button on the way out. I love each and every one of you for spending some of your Saturday with me. Hope you enjoyed it. I will see all y'all in the next one. Until next time, you already know what time it is, baby. Fins up all day, every day. See y'all later, guys. Take it easy. Have a fantastic weekend.